All right. Good morning, everybody. I hope you all had a good holiday. Good to see a couple of you back with us today. So I've been trying to share the information from other classes with you guys that weren't able to be here. If you have anything that you're missing or that you haven't gotten, you can yell at me sometime. But today, what we're going to get into is chapter 4. So I'm going to go ahead and share the screen. And just so you guys that haven't been here know, what we're having to do is record every class on a Zoom meeting just in case. So you get 2 for 1. You get live and you have a Jumbotron version, so you can choose where to watch. So let's share the screen. Go here. And we will talk about managing organizational behavior. So let's see, I'm going to look back. I don't know them off the top of my head. We talked about first line management was chapter 1. And then we moved on to becoming a first line manager, how you kind of make the transition into that role from just general recreation practitioner. How would you move to first line manager? Then chapter 3, we talked about managing and leading. So how does leading play into that? And then today, we're going to talk about, as a manager, how do we organize behavior, basically. Pretty good bit of good information in this chapter. Making sure, okay. Organizational behavior. There's things that influence behavior and decisions of managers, and those 2 things are listed here in this top one. The culture of a workplace and the climate of a workplace have a lot to do with decisions that are made by managers and employees, and the overall just feel of coming to work. You know, that's what it comes down to. It comes down to the culture and the climate that you're dealing with. And just to rehash, for you guys that have not been here, you know, I was telling them the first day, and you probably saw this on some of the stuff that I sent, but, you know, this course is building on the things that we had in the previous courses where we did, you know, how do we do the activities? How do we do assessments to find out what we're going to do? 262 was just the intro to therapeutic rec. What is it? And now we're to the point of, if you go through the process and decided to go CTRS route, you may come in the position to be a manager over a department. So now this whole class is about how would I lead a group of therapeutic recreation people as an administrator. You know, how would I do that? So that's kind of why we're talking so much about leading, managing, things like that, because that's what this class is all about, is trying to get you ready to step into an actual role. Organizational culture. Again, culture drives organization and shapes interaction. Simply put, as it has here, the culture is the way we do business, quote. You know, that's how it feels when you come in there. The climate, emotional expectations of manager and staff. You can have a formal or a relaxed climate. Professionals desire a climate that permits job satisfaction that meets their needs. I have worked in climates that are very much both of those. I've worked in a climate that is very formal. I've worked in climates that are relaxed. Here, it is a mixture of the two for me, honestly. Some days we are meeting and we're working on curriculum and things like that. That is a very formal climate. You know, on a normal day when you just meet people in the hall and you're teaching your classes and we don't have special events going on, it's that pretty relaxed climate for me here. With therapeutic recreation, trying to be over a group of people running a recreation department, what do you think would be the best climate for out of formal or relaxed? What do you think would be most efficient or the best, given what you're trying to do? Yes. I mean, it depends on your group of people. If you have a group of immature, young, goofy, you know, say you were working at a camp and you were working with 15-year-old counselors or something. Now, they've got to have fun or they're not going to be any good. But you would have to work in some time of the formal moments, at least, to be able to teach them the things that they need to be doing. You know, otherwise they won't calm down long enough to get what you're telling them. Some things on this next one: organizations are constantly changing. That we all know. Okay, and we're all seeing this next part firsthand right now. Change causes discomfort. This mask on my face right now is a change from what normal teaching environment would be. It is causing me discomfort right now. I'm sure your masks are causing you some discomfort right now. But in general, you know, people are creatures of habit. You know, you come to work, you go to class, you get up at this time, you do this, you eat. When you go to Taco Bell, you eat the same thing every time. Hopefully not a Mexican pizza, because those are going bye-bye. That's bad news right there. Okay, that change caused me discomfort. Just saying. But in general, we all get in the little groove, and it does cause discomfort. It causes stress. You know, changing jobs. You may be excited about that, but at the same time, you're going to feel some discomfort, stress, anxiety. You may have a new operating system come in on your computer that's going to, you know, you'll be in-serviced on it, but it's going to help things be much, much easier. But up front, you've got to learn it. There's your discomfort. You know, people are going to be resistant to doing something that will even make long-term positive changes because they don't want to do the small things up front to learn how to use it and make life easier, because this is how we've always done it. Those are the most kind of poisonous words that you could use in a work setting, really, especially if you're asked questions by your employees or something. Well, this is just how we've always done it. It shows that you're set and not open to hearing what anybody has to say. That sets that tone right off the bat. So as a manager, your job is to facilitate this change in an environment, technology, and people, whether it's, you know, hey, we're moving from one building to the next for our office. You may have that change. Like I said, technology, I was just talking about, if you have a new operating system or something. If you have new people moving in or out of the department, that's going to be things that you are going to facilitate the change and try to make as smooth as possible for your team. And when you plan a change, you know, this whole API process we've talked about is helpful, not just in therapeutic recreation. It's, you know, I've told people this before. that it is something that applies to almost anything that includes a decision. If you want to get right down to it, you're not setting goals and objectives for every little thing, but you are going to assess, okay, do we need to do this? What is this going to do? Then you plan how it's going to go, how it's going to happen. Then you implement it and then see how it worked. I mean, it's almost everything you do. API is there, not as formal as it is with recreation therapy, IPPs and all, but it does fit the bill for making decisions. And a problem that you run into as a manager, and I mean, I find myself this way. Obviously, we're all selfish to a degree. And when you think of something changing, the first thing you think of is, oh man, this is going to be a pain in the butt. I got to learn how to do this. I've got to come to 2 trainings next week to learn this. Instead of, that's where we're going to focus, because that's what affects us. We don't focus on the fact that it can speed up our paperwork process by 50% once we get it in place. To us, it's a pain in the butt because it's a change. But that's the thing, as a manager, you can kind of bridge that gap with your employees and say, hey, look, I know this is not fun, but just think about once we learn all this and get it put into place, life will be a lot easier. So just hang in there with me for a couple weeks and then you'll be glad we did this. That's the battle that you have to fight, because people do consider personal impact much more than the benefit that's going to be seen for the agency. And that's just human nature, I think. Managing change. As a manager, you need to identify positive and negative consequences of change. Be prepared to discuss those with staff, because, change brings about communication. You're going to be asked questions. Some employees will be more vocal than others. Some will buck and fight with you on things. Basically, try to put up a wall and be like, no, tell me why. They want explanations on everything. So you need to identify both. You need to say, yes, there are negative things that is going to come out of this change, but you need to have some positives that are going to offset that to keep morale up and to keep your workers in the right frame of mind. Something that's important, the next one, you are, as a manager, responsible for creating that climate of trust. You want to have a climate of trust where your staff feel like they can come to you with concerns. Not that they're going to come to you and be answered with, well, that's just how we always do it. Just, do it because I said so. That's not a good climate. If you won't keep employees, you won't have productive employees. The manager also paces the rate of change. You set up how fast or how slow it needs to happen to best suit your needs. You also build collaborations and coalitions and make negotiations to engage your employees. That's where I'm talking about talking to your employees and getting them to buy in, basically. That negotiation, say, hey, give me 2 weeks of training on this and you will see what I'm telling you is right. You'll be thankful that we did this down the road. So just hang in there. Come on. You have to be a motivator. You have to be able to sway people to buy into things as a manager. You can't make people change their mind, but you can show them the positives of what you're trying to get done and what it can do for the agency and to help them in the long run. So that's why you've got to identify these positive consequences of change up front. So There's a lot of different things that influence performance of your employees. Attitude, personality, motivation, perception, learning styles, diversity, and group dynamics. I'm sure you all see where these play in. You know, the attitude, not just of the workers, but of the manager. You know, it's as a teacher, if you come into class and you're just not, that's one thing that makes these classes good for me, is that I actually care about what we're talking about. So I'm not going to come in and be like, all right, let's just get through this stuff. I mean, unless it's a 262 and it's the history portion, because that I actually was like, all right, let's just get through the history. That's not the, but your attitude, the employee's attitude is going to be different for each one, and that affects them, the performance you're going to see. Everybody has different personalities. Some people are more outgoing. That may suit certain jobs better than others. Obviously, some people are more motivated than others. And how are you able to motivate them? Group dynamics is another one that I see here that plays a big role. And that's just, as a manager, we'll talk more about dynamics here shortly, but you know, it's kind of your role to help smooth out these group dynamics and get people working as a team, and you're the team leader is what it amounts to. That's where group dynamics play in. So there's different types of groups. You've got formal groups and you've got informal groups. Formal groups, you actually create these to accomplish specific organizational goals, okay? Some good examples of this are task forces and committees. We have committees, well, it's covered on the next part. Groups accomplish what one person cannot, like hiring personnel. That's something that they have here at the university, you know, hiring committees or search committees for jobs. Then when you bring in applicants, you have a group of people who then spend some time with the applicant, then they talk amongst themselves and can make decisions. So they put it where not just one person is making these decisions, but what that is, this is a formal group where people are either told to be in a group or asked to participate in this group. Then there's also informal groups. These are groups, they just evolve naturally through social interactions to satisfy personal needs. It's just kind of like making friends with people that you're around. That's basically all this is talking about. In these groups, communication is not formal. It's not sent out via email, anything like that. It just happens through the grapevine, as it says. Productivity of formal groups is improved by informal groups. I've also seen situations, now it depends on the informal group. I've seen informal groups that are disruptive also. You know, even teaching classes, my 394 class. Bless you.
Thank you.
Nice job sneezing into your elbow.
Yeah.
I said, I can't sneeze on my elbow. I was telling my wife I couldn't sneeze on my elbow, and she's like, it's the inside of your elbow, and she didn't even realize I was joking. But that's beside the point. My 394 class, big class, usually has about 60 people. We're packed in here like sardines. There are informal groups that form in that class. Some of them are formed before they even come to class. You've got boyfriends and girlfriends that sit in front of one another, and they're snickering and talking back and forth during class. And then you've got 3 or 4 that are in the back that are, you know, passing a phone back and forth, looking at something that's apparently funny. You know, those are informal groups that negatively affect performance, I would say. You know, if you wanted to look at how well the class learned that day, you'd have some groups that, you know, are taking it seriously. They're taking notes. They're watching what's going on. They're listening. Then you've got the groups that I just named that are kind of doing their own thing. They would lower the curve, you know, in the learning curve for the class. So you've got groups that go both directions is basically what I'm saying. There's a development and dynamic in groups. Now, we've all heard these things that are on the left side here, talking about the maturity of groups developing over time, and there's different stages. And you've got forming, storming, norming, performing, reforming, and adjourning. Have you all heard of that before, basically? It's covered in your book. This is something that, I'll say that's something, once your book gets here, between now and test time, you need to know about these forming, storming, norming, and performing, what happens in each one. For the sake of time, we're not going to go through each one of them today, and you'll remember it better if you actually find it in the book and read it, okay? But that's something that I know we will test on for sure, so I'll go ahead and put that out there. Effectiveness in both individuals and in groups are influenced by some factors that are on the right side here, such as group rank, group status, group role, the norms, the size of the group, and group cohesiveness. How well, you know, how bound together is a specific group. The group rank is kind of like, where do you stand in the group? And that's going to play into the individual effectiveness of someone. The group status, how much power does this group feel like it has to make decisions and to do things? What is your role in the group? What norms are expected of the group? If you have if you're in a group, let's say you're doing study groups for a class and y'all broke up into you know, groups of 4. The group norms, what do you as a group expect to make on the test? What do you want to make? You know what I mean? That's going to affect your effectiveness, because the group as a whole is going to be like, all right, hey, let's make a B on this thing at least. And then you've got another group that's saying, hey, I just want to pass. They're going to study a little bit less than the one who's saying B. And then you've got the one group that's like, you know, if I don't make an A on this, I'm not getting in PT school. I got to make an A, and I need y'all to help me. And then everybody in that group is really going to study. So you see how the different groups, by the norms that they set, this is what we expect to do, affects everybody in that group. Size has a big factor with people. Some people work better in small groups because they're not dealing with as many people. They're not as shy because it's only a few people and you get to know each other better. Some people kind of come out of their shell in big groups because they feel like, well, there's so many of us, nobody's, you know, everybody's doing is having to do this, so nobody's paying attention to me, kind of like dancing. I'm one that, of course, you know, I'm too old to dance now, but back in the day, I would never dance because I felt like everybody in the place was watching me, which is very silly because nobody was paying attention to what I was doing. But if I was to dance somewhere, I felt like everybody in there was just, you know, like on the movies where the record goes and stops and everybody gets quiet and everybody's looking. I felt like that person, you know, like, so that's just a play on the group size thing. And cohesiveness, as I said, that's just how well does the group get along, how much do they bond. So that plays a role in how effective a group can be. And there it went twice. Let me go back. Effective groups share information, and individuals perform efficiently and effectively. Okay, the key there, that's what happens in effective groups. So as a manager, you facilitate positive work climate for your group members, and they feel safe discussing this. This is very, very, very important, this middle one. You facilitate a positive work climate, and your group members feel safe discussing concerns and critiquing new behaviors. You as a manager have to answer questions sometimes. You may feel like it is, you may feel to a degree like it's almost like they're being disrespectful when someone is asking you a question. You know, you say, this is how we're going to have to start doing it now. And you really, as a manager, a good manager, you have to be prepared to answer why. Because before some people will buy into change, they need to know that why. So you need to have an answer for that. And you may have to get that from someone above the ladder from you. You know, say, look, they're going to ask me why we're doing this. What should I tell them? And if your superior tells you, tell them because you said so. And your superior is not doing their job. You know what I'm getting at there? I don't think as a group member working for someone that you should just question every little thing that you're asked to do, you know. But I do think that there should be a climate where you feel safe to ask why, or to ask questions or clarification, and not be ashamed or made to feel dumb because you're asking a question. That's just not the proper way to feel in a group. If you give proper managerial support, these groups that we've been talking about turn into teams, which is kind of where you're wanting to go. Team kind of leads you down that road of realizing that you have the same goal. You know, if you're on a team, you're working together. That is implied. That's what we get out of that. So a group may not be necessarily working together so much if it's an ineffective group. If a group turns into a team, you are on the same page, on the same path, making progress. So really, it says teams may be the primary work unit in the organization. Now, it depends on the size of the organization. It depends on how the organization is set up. But teams should be the primary work unit in the organization if work is broken up into sections where you have different people who are going to be working on the same things. If they're made to feel like and set up as a team, productivity will go up. Teams, like I said, they have common goals, and you see productivity, quality, safety, and individual performance improve when you're working in this team dynamic. Once you get to this point, now it's almost like we're getting into sports mode here. Once your people are functioning as teams instead of just groups, then you can assume as a manager kind of the role of coach. Makes sense? I mean, are you seeing where we're kind of, how the progression is going here? And honestly, it becomes easier for you as a manager once you can get your people to this place. Coaching is a lot easier than leading every little step. You know, once you get to the coaching portion, you're just giving directions to help with what's going on. That is not nearly as much information as what is covered in the chapter. Now I want to talk about a couple of these things that are also on Blackboard. And then I'll go back to share that screen again. if you have not been looking at these summaries, they're actually really good. And they are very helpful to you guys when it comes time to study. You know, if you go, and that's why I took the time to put this on here for you, because it will be very helpful when you're looking at like what's going to be on the tests and things like that. So let me go back to Zoom here and share my screen again. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what's on here. We talked about, number one, we talked about organizational culture versus organizational climate. So know that. This is just kind of reviewing before we move on ahead. We talked about some strategies that managers can use to advance change and minimize resistance to new practices. A lot of times like we talked about how change is uncomfortable. So you need to have ways of getting your people to buy into what you're doing. You need to be ready to answer questions and open to that. We talked about the factors that influence staff performance in a department. Without looking back, who can think of some of those factors that influence staff performance? It had a little picture of a woman like carrying a purse on the thing. Don't cheat. See if you can think of any of those. That would definitely influence performance for sure. This one, different learning styles play a role. Diversity, we didn't talk about much. Group dynamics, people attitudes, personalities, motivation, perception. Those were the ones that were listed there. A lot of times, also, this is just a little test prep for you too. These learning outcomes, they're basically covered in the slideshow, but some you have to dig a little deeper. And for the sake of time and trying to get through the material, I can't go through every word of every chapter, but we can lead you the right direction. We talked about elements determining group effectiveness and performance in work settings. The manager's responsibilities in group and team development and how it is actually a positive to move, from groups towards teams, how that's a positive, and evaluate the benefits of team-based structures and organizations. So we hit all of those things as we went through. So know the difference between formal groups and informal groups. What's the purpose of a formal group? Or the difference? What's the difference between a formal group and an informal group? Right. Informal kind of just happens. That's who you gravitate to. That's kind of your cliques. That's your informal groups. Formal group is made by the facility or by the manager for a reason. Here, I want you three to work on putting this together. Hey, I need 5 people to be on a planning committee for the fall festival. Who do we have that can be on that? That's the difference between that. So understand the difference between informal and formal. And coming off the weekend, and I'm going to be honest with you, I'm fighting between this contact tracing and teaching, and I'm sending out quarantine letters to people at 12:30 a.m. and they're sending me things saying, the first question I have is, why did I receive this so late? I'm like, well, it's the only time I had a chance to work on it. So I'm going to let y'all go early today, which I'm sure nobody is too mad about. And like for now that we've gotten everybody here, we're going to keep on rolling. We're going to go into chapter 5 next time. Try to get your books as quick as you can and start catching up on reading these chapters because it's important. Once we get through chapter 7, we'll go ahead and do the first test. At that point, once we get a test under our belt and I have some sort of grade that we can kind of use, I'm not saying exactly what you make on your test is what you're going to get for a midterm grade because it matters whether you're here and paying attention and all that stuff too. But I'll at least have something to do a midterm grade on. So we're going to go ahead and get through 7 chapters, do a test. I'll try to, like we had before, I'll try to give you some, basically I've given you ideas by giving you these, what's on the screen right now. This is a good indicator of where the test questions are going to come from. And I'm still trying to decide, honestly, whether we're going to test in class or whether I'm just going to let you put it on Blackboard and give you a little time frame to take it, or let you take it home, or whatever. I'm trying to make that decision right now. I may let you do it in class with your materials, something like that. I just want you to learn it and take it with you when you leave. That's what's important to me, is that I want it to kind of stick with you and be able to, at the very least, go back and find it. So anyway, next class, chapter 5, and we're moving right along pretty well. You guys stay safe, have a good day, and I'll see you Thursday, and I'll see some of y'all this afternoon on my Zoom meeting.